Alex here with a video on high conflict child custody. I'm going to cover how abusers win. Some attorneys will use these tactics, usually the less, I can't say they all do, usually it's the less scrupulous ones. So, I mean, in a way this could be a legal nuts and bolts video, but this is mainly a high conflict child custody video because this is mainly what I went through and I'm sure a lot of other people are going through. And also, as bad as some of the worst attorneys can be, the person, your ex, is always going to be much worse because for them it's more of an obsession, whereas for an attorney it's just kind of, they just want to beat you and move on. You know, with their next case or whatever. So let's go into, I've identified 4 different tactics. The first one is they try to psych you out. So this one is basically, you know, acting kind of like you're asking for something that's unreasonable, and not only is it unreasonable, but you look stupid for asking for that. So in my case, my ex tried to psych me out by saying that moms always win, and you are going to look stupid asking for joint custody. Obviously, I didn't buy it, and I went forward. And her attorney actually did this too, but as I mentioned, I'm going to focus more on exes here. The other thing that they will try to do is trick you. Like, I've seen this happen where somebody, like an abuser, will like violate a court order, and then you'll file like a motion for order to show cause. This is just one example of how they can trick you. And then they will tell you that they are sorry and that they won't do it again. And usually this is because you actually have a good claim and they're going to be put in jail. Like, you've gone above and beyond and you've shown a great case. They've got an advice from a lawyer saying you're screwed. And so they'll trick you and get you to withdraw it, or they'll tug on your heartstrings. And then as soon as you withdraw that motion, then they'll just go back to their old behavior and continue to harass you, or you know, just basically make your life a living hell. The third one is trying to get you to give up. This is kind of an overarching principle that kind of encompasses all of them. Abusers target, they focus on you. They don't focus on winning the court case by getting the truth. They don't focus on convincing the judge as much as they focus on beating you as a person. So one of them is they just try to get you to give up. That's the easiest, well, that's not, well, yeah, that's the easiest way, and it's also the most surefire way to win. The best, I mean, the only way you can guarantee a victory is to basically prevent there from ever being a battle in the first place and just getting your opponent to give up. This is a lot of people who end up screwed in their custody cases. It happens because the abuser just got them to give up. And it's really easy for them to do that just because they have a different personality style. And they usually target victims who have that kind of personality of, you know what, this is just too much work, I'm done. And then maybe the victim just tells himself they're a better person by not going to court. You know, I'm a better person by not fighting my ex and letting them have everything that they want. Meanwhile, their ex is abusing and neglecting their kids, and then their kids are going to grow up with issues. But of course, this type of victim mentality, the victim tells themselves that they're a better person because by giving up, they're taking the high road, which is not true at all. I mean, it's anyway, as I said, abusers will typically look for that type of person with that type of thinking so that when they abuse them, they will be able to fall back on just being able to get them to give up or just crawl, you know, crawl away, run away, whatever. The fourth one is not, it's not as easy for an abuser to do, but sometimes they succeed at this. What they do is they get you to fill in to their false narrative. So abusers will build up a false narrative. Basically, they'll say you're an abuser, you're violent, you're irresponsible, you can't hold a job, you use drugs, you're a drinker, whatever. You yell, you scream at the kids. And it's all a bunch of lies. But what happens is they can sometimes get you to actually act out in ways that make it look like everything that they're saying is the truth. And the funny thing about this is an abuser doesn't really have to show that you're doing something all of the time to convince other people that you actually are that type of person. They usually only have to show 1, maybe 2 examples. And once you do make that mistake and you do scream at your kids and a few people see it, then people just kind of believe them because they've just seen one example of you doing that. And it's really unfair, and it's really hard for people to get this through their head. You're being baited, and you're being your buttons are being pushed because the abuser knows they just need that one example. And what really sucks is even an email is enough to convince the court. So like even an email of you like calling them out and saying, calling them names, fighting fire with fire, that's all they really need. They're not trying to look better than you. They're happy to make you look the same as them. They're happy to pull you down to their level and make the situation as complicated as possible and add as many issues as possible for the court to have to resolve that the court isn't going to want to pay attention to the details. And it really sucks when this happens. I've been there, and it takes years and years and years to turn that Titanic around. Once you make that mistake, you'll be in a child custody case for 6 to 8 years, and the judge will think I didn't know who was being more responsible because Alex here sent some crazy emails too. I also wanted to add just one extra thing. When it comes to personality disordered people, this goes to a really weird level where they almost try to make it so that you are focused on their opinions and their ideas and their goals. And this can be really mind-bending for a person who doesn't know how to deal with it. When you're dealing with a personality disordered abuser, it's much harder to deal with because I think I mentioned earlier, it's like an obsession. It's like for them, it pervades every thought that they have, every action that they take. They're focused on beating you. And one of those things that at least that I fell for was thinking that you need to convince them to win. And because their mind is so messed up, this ends up being a trap because you'll never convince them. They have this list of conclusions in their head that they think are true, and they aren't going to change those. So it's like, you're a bad parent, you shouldn't have custody, you shouldn't even see the kids. These conclusions are there and they won't be changed. And if you think that you need to change their mind to get anywhere, you're not going to get anywhere, and you're going to get so frustrated, and you're going to end up going crazy, and you're going to end up acting irrational, trying to get them to understand your perspective, your point of view. You're going to have emails that are essays. You're going to have 5, 10, 15 emails in one day. It's just if you identify your ex as a person who just cannot understand, just doesn't get it, and that they probably have a personality disorder. I wish I would have done this from day one, but it took me a few years. I'm going to tell you that this is what works against these types of people. Their opinion no longer matters. Tell yourself, starting today, their opinion doesn't matter. I'm not going to try to change their mind anymore. I'm only going to try to change the court's mind. You don't try to change their mind. You don't try to change their lawyer's mind. You don't try to change any of the employees involved in the process, the paralegals, the clerks. Your only purpose going forward is to get the court to understand. So your communications with your ex are going to change. You're going to communicate in a way, they call it gray rock. It's called gray rock because you become emotionless, you become ambivalent, you become dispassionate. You just communicate information only, and you communicate in the sense that you cover your butt in court. You don't want them to be able to say that my ex didn't respond to something about like a school appointment or a meeting or something. Anything that is relevant to the court, you respond to in the way that covers you, and that is it. That's the only thing you need to do. Just think to yourself, I'm not trying to change their mind with this response. I'm just trying to cover my butt in court. It's such a really bad thing for me to say on a video, but when you're dealing with a personality disordered person, this is what you have to do. Nothing else will work. You cannot change their mind. You cannot co-parent with them. You need to do the bare minimum that gets the point across, have the email as short as possible, and as I mentioned, just think to yourself, what does this email need to look like when it comes up as an exhibit in court? Because that is all that matters at that point. Once you've made that realization, once you realize that your ex is not communicating constructively, that's all that matters. And then your focus from then on is convincing the judge. And this is a whole different ballgame. You're going to find yourself thinking, first off, you're not going to be as frustrated because you're going to think, well, of course they don't get it. I didn't expect them to get it. I sent this response just because I knew I was going to need that as an exhibit in the future, you know. And then when you're in the courtroom and your ex is floundering and coming up with all these insane nonsensical things, you're focused on getting the court to see the big picture. You're focusing on changing the opinion of the court. And then once the court agrees with you, the court will enter an order. And then, of course, as I mentioned in my previous videos, if the order isn't followed, you move forward with contempt of court. But please watch the contempt of court video because I don't want people to just think it's... And also watch the gotcha litigation video. Anyway, that's the last piece of advice I can give when it comes to personality disordered abusers, because it's a whole different ball game. It's never ending. And as I mentioned, they try to get you to sort of go into their world. They try and get you to sort of think that you have to convince them. And this is the most wrong-headed thing you can do with that type of person. You do not have to convince them. You do not have to change your mind. You just have to get them ordered to do what they're supposed to do, because they're not going to do the right thing unless the court tells them to do it. If anyone has any questions regarding any of this stuff, please feel free to leave a comment or send an email. This is something that I went through for 6 years. That's my child custody litigation, up to getting primary physical custody, and another 2 years from that point to legal custody, and then terminating her parental rights. So yes, it's a total of 8 years. It's a long time. I don't know how many emails have gone back and forth before I realized this, and I wish somebody would have told me, because I probably would have gone through this a lot quicker if I would have known that I didn't need to change her mind and convince her, that I really just needed to change the court's mind and convince the court. It would have been easier. It's that you're dealing with a person who's so messed up in the head that it's actually easier to deal with their lawyer and the judge. This is nuts, but I actually realized that after like probably year 3, that I actually would rather talk to a lawyer, because I actually can get things done this way. And it's like, wow, I can actually get my son what he needs by waiting 9 months for a court order, rather than trying to convince this person and send them 2,000 emails and go round and round and round and round. And now, when I go to court after the fact, after I've done all of those things, now I have like 4,000 different exhibits. It's like, no, don't do that. Just plan straight ahead that it's going to take some court action. Keep those emails small, short, and few, and you can get something done with 10 exhibits instead of 4,000. And the court's going to see that and go, wow, this is not a big fat phone book of emotion. I can actually read this in 20 minutes and figure out what's going on. Whereas these other people over here foolishly thought they would be able to communicate with their personality disordered ex, and here I have to look at 672 different emails. No, they're not going to do it. It's that person is screwed. You who've got these issues down as lean as possible, who's been sending emails that are 3 sentences long, who's got only a couple, maybe a dozen emails to look at before I can make a decision, you're going to get that judge. That judge is going to put you on the top of the pile. And I started to notice that in my case. In the very beginning of my case, my motions were fat and had all kinds of stuff attached, and it would take months to get a decision. Towards the end of my case, my motions were shorter, and I would get a much quicker decision. Sometimes I wouldn't even have a hearing. Sometimes I'd file my legal custody. Here's how I got sole legal custody. I filed a motion for sole legal custody. The court didn't even set a hearing. The court just mailed me an order in the mail saying, you got sole legal custody. So that just shows you how, it's not just winning your case, but winning it quickly and with the least amount of stress. Imagine how much more stressful it would be to go to a hearing and have to hire an attorney. I didn't even hire an attorney, and I got sole legal custody without a hearing. It's crazy what you can do when you start to actually figure out how to deal with these types of people. So anyway, with that, I'm going to go ahead and end this video. As I mentioned, feel free to leave a comment, smash the like button, subscribe, and thank you for